recorded session today. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join this important conversation. And I'm not sure if she's in yet, but a special welcome to Emily Janice Irwin. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we get into our housekeeping items, Action for Healthy Communities acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 territory, respecting the culture, languages, and history of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, whose footsteps have marked this land for centuries. We've got a few housekeeping. Sorry, give me just a moment. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. So we've got a few housekeeping items. There's quite a number of us here today. So in order to engage in a fruitful discussion, we will ask that everyone who can turn their videos on. Should you have any questions or comments at any point in the session, please use the raise your hand icon, or any other option would be the chat box. There'll be polls throughout the discussion posed through the hour. The poll questions will just pop up on your screen and you'll simply select an answer. And as for questions that'll be raised during the section, you can actually respond directly in the chat box or by raising your hand as well. Our agenda for the hour, we have an exciting program. We're going to discuss safe environment, what that is. We're going to look at what is anti-Black racism, the systemic and institutional racism that we find here in Canada. We're going to talk about diverse experiences of Black Canadians growing up and moving to Canada. What can we do about anti-Black racism? And we're going to dive right into the EBG program at AHC and talk to a few mentors and program participants. And lastly, moving forward. So before we dive in, I want to also recognize that there may be some subject matter experts in this session today. So as we discuss, I hope we'll join with the personal experiences of others and the knowledge of others, and myself included, on each of the topics that we do discuss. So what do we mean when we discuss the safe environment? So there are a couple of things. I hope to facilitate our discussion and learning in a very light and respectable and collaborative way. I want us to feel very safe and comfortable to ask questions as much as possible. The more we understand, the more we identify and address any knowledge gaps. It's also important for us to be cognizant of the various emotions that we might be going through as we listen, learn, and share. That self-reflection is an important piece when we begin to discuss how we will be moving forward. And lastly, we're going to dive right into our first poll to better understand how we're facilitating our discussion today. So you'll see popping up on your screen a question, and the question will be, which do you identify as? Which do you identify as Black or of African descent, member of visible minority, or none of the above? Okay, I think we should have the results. So 48% of us identify as Black or of African descent, 22% members of visible minority, and 30% of us are none of the above. Very good. Thank you for that. So I'm going to pass it along to Ngabe, who is a project coordinator at Action for Healthy Communities, and let her share a little bit more about what EBG is. Ngabe?
Thank you, Christabel. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and spending your lunch hour with us. We really appreciate that. As Christabel said, I'm the project coordinator for Empowering Black Girls. And Empowering Black Girls is a community participation and digital storytelling project that aims to empower Canadian girls of African and Caribbean descent. The Empowering Girl project is funded by the Canadian Heritage, to whom we would like to express our gratitude today. for their trust and the opportunity they gave us to be able to empower young Black women. And thank you so much. I believe there's someone representing Canadian Heritage today, so thank you so much. Empowering Black girls provide an opportunity for Black girls between the age of 16 and 24 to celebrate their heritage and their rich culture, to voice their opinions on the issues that impact them and their communities, and to work together to find ways of addressing them, positive ways. The participants have the opportunity to develop leadership skills, life skills through workshops, discussions, mentorship, community projects, and fun activities as well. So it is important for us that at this stage of the lives of these young women, when they're forging their identity, it's important to empower them and to give them the tools to develop a higher positive self-identity and racial identity. So as a result, they would also become more resilient in the face of hardship. Most importantly, our hope is that the young Black women will be able to embrace their identity and be proud of who they are as individuals and as a community as well. Empowering Black girls is part of Action for Healthy Communities. And Action for Healthy Communities is a dynamic community-based agency that serves people of all ages, backgrounds, including families, children, youth, adults, and seniors. And we have different programs and supports that are tailored to facilitate community development and to boost the capacity of individuals, families, and communities. I would also like to thank our Executive Director, Aftab Khan, and Sherry Park, the manager, youth program manager, for thinking of this program and making it happen for the Black community. So we have three main components at EBG. One of them is mentorship and workshops. We have community projects and digital storytelling. So in the workshops and with the mentors, the girls are able to learn about self-awareness, self-esteem, confidence, mental health, emotional intelligence, leadership, that starts with self-leadership, pathfinding, resilience, and more. We have the chance of having amazing and inspiring mentors, successful Black women who volunteer their time to share their experiences and expertise to inspire and empower young Black women at EBG. EBG is Empowering Black Girls. So, and Christabel, our facilitator today, is one of them. So we're very lucky. We have women who are different professional areas. We have social workers, life coaches, a professional athlete, a Canadian Olympic champion, human resource manager, financial advisors, entrepreneurs, and a psychotherapist. We'll have one of these inspiring women speak today and tell us what it has been for her to be a mentor at Empowering Black Girls. As an example of one of the impacts of the mentors is one of the mentors led a session on identity, which has been one of the most impactful sessions, where she asked the girls one question, like, what do you identify? What is your identity? And many of the young women said, I am, for example, I'm Ethiopian, or I am Somali, or I am, so they would describe themselves, I'm a student, but none of them said I'm Canadian. And that was very heartbreaking to me as an immigrant myself who's been in Canada for 6 years. I struggle with that, but I thought it was just because I've been here for a short period of time. And I'm now a Canadian citizenship, and I'm embracing I'm a Canadian citizen, and I'm embracing that. But it was kind of sad to see that girls who were born here and grew up here, and some of them who have not been anywhere else, but they don't identify as Canadian. So what we learned in that session is that they have the right to occupy space in Canada, and also to believe and to embrace that identity. And by the end of that session, we all felt Canadian. We all felt that, yes, I might be Rwandan, but I am Rwandan Canadian. So from that moment, everybody felt Canadian. Everybody understood that we have the right to not only occupy space and claim it as our own, and not only on paper on our passports, but in our daily life. So for right now, Empowering Black Girls is running the second cohort. The first cohort wrapped up in June of this year, and the girls worked on different wonderful community projects that we'll have the chance to talk about today and watch some of the videos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ngabe, for that. So let's dive right in. What is anti-Black racism? So by definition, anti-Black racism is prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, discrimination that's directed specifically at people of African descent. And it's rooted in their unique history. I shouldn't say there, in our unique history and experience of enslavement and colonization. There's a famous quote by a man named George Sanayana that says, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So here's our second poll. I'll let the team pull it up here. The question for the second poll is, how many of you were ever taught Black Canadian history in school? Elementary or high school in Canada? So specifically, Black Canadian history, and either in elementary or high school. The poll should be up. I see a chat box from Tara. Do you see the poll now, Tara? You should see it pop up.
I don't see it pop up. No, that's why I asked. Is it as part of the Zoom meeting, there's a link, or a poll that just pops up?
Yes, it should just pop up on your screen right now.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, sorry about that, Tara. So let me submit mine. I think I'm holding up. There we go. We'll wait for the results here. So 71% of us said we didn't. And that's because I also didn't learn Black Canadian history and growing up here in Canada. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention in social studies, but Black Canadian history is not formally part of the curriculum. So let's talk about it. We'll talk about just a brief history on the Black Canadian. So the first known Black Canadian arrived here around 1608. He was a man named Matthew de Coast. Now the very first slave, however, arrived here in 1628, and his name was Olivier Lejeune. His master was believed to have been a priest, and Olivier Lejeune was only 6 years old. During the 17th and 18th century, thousands of Black people came here as slaves. The lives of the Black Canadians were met with resentment of their presence, and in 1817, Lieutenant Governor Lord Dalhousie made strong recommendations for the removal of Black Canadians to America or Sierra Leone, successfully managing to convince just a handful to be resettled to Trinidad in 1821. Petition Sandwich, which was made in 1849, opposed plans to settle colored people in several townships in southern Ontario. In the 1800s, after several years of neglect and intolerance, African Canadians set sail for Sierra Leone, which is in Africa, in what was known as Canada's second Back to Africa movement. In 1851, protest meetings were held by Black parents who were resisting enforcement of the Ontario Common Schools Act of 1851, which had led to segregation of Black schools. There was the burning of Guysborough. Now, Guysborough was home to about 1,200 Black loyalists in 1784. The entire village was burned to the ground, killing 642 African Canadians. The Shelburne riots, Now, this one's very interesting because the Shelburne riots, this was actually the first recorded race-related riot in North America, right here on Canadian soil, between Black and white Canadians. It ended in deaths of many after an angry mob attacked loyalists in church property. Now, Thomas Peters, he was African-born, enslaved in North Carolina, fleeing to serve in the army. He was a prominent Black loyalist. He actually managed to fight for Black Canadians, making his way to England and eventually successfully settling Black Canadians in Sierra Leone, Africa. Richard Pierpoint, he was at the forefront of the colored troops. These were Black troops that served in many battles, the Battle of Queenstown Heights, the Battle of Fort George, just to name a couple, right? And then right here in Alberta, John Ware, he was born around 1845 and he died in Brooks around 1905. John Ware was a legendary rancher. He was a cowboy. He was one of the best cowboys this part of the country had, despite the discrimination and the racism that he lived in. Now we can bring it a little closer to home here in Edmonton. Led by J.J. Maloney, the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, was only delegalized in 2003. So I discussed Black history, or the history of the Black Canadians, so that we can gather an in-depth sight that I personally wasn't given at school, and just remind us of the quote that I mentioned earlier by George Santayana, that those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So dare I say that those who don't know the past are condemned to not know its repercussions in our present day. So as I mentioned earlier, take note of the emotions that you felt during that history, and we'll action them towards the end of our program. So when we think of systemic or institutional racism, we can go back as far as the Underground Railroad, where there was some misconception that freedom gained by the African-American slaves meant equality for the African-American slaves. So since history would have it, the grants that Black runaway slaves were supposed to be given, the land and such, they weren't. So the freedom they ran toward, wasn't there, but instead they were met with inequality. We can dive into that a little bit more. Here's some background. According to a 2016 census, over 2/3 of men and women of color had post-secondary education, which is higher than the general population statistic of 28.5%. Now, with that in mind, here's our poll question. What percentage of Canadian corporate leaders are Black? What do you think is the percentage of Canadian corporate leaders who are Black? And we'll wait for those results. So 15% of us think at least 10. 10% of us think at least 25.6. And majority of us believe that less than 1%, which is right. So Ryerson University's Diversity Institute did a study that revealed that of the 1,639 board members from 178 corporations, only 13 were Black. That's 0.79%. To other racialized members, only 61 held those spots, meaning white members held 91% of those positions. Corporate Knights finalized their count to be less than 1% of Black Canadians holding positions as corporate leaders. So when we take a look at our educational system, we took a poll earlier, and in our conversation, we saw that the history of Black Canadians wasn't taught in the majority of us at school. So this is an example of what we would call institutional racism. Thinking back to our history and our social studies class, this is a chat box question, or you can raise your hand. Whose lens do you think those textbooks were written in? So actually you can unmute your mic and go ahead and speak if you'd like, or just plop in your response in the chat box. So whose lens do you think are history classes or our social studies classes that we learned? Whose lens were those textbooks written in?
It seems to be very Eurocentric, very whitewashed. You see that not just in Black history, but even the telling of Indigenous history that we do get in school. It's only until like I got to grade 9 or grade 10 that I realized how like manipulated it was to tell a Eurocentric story.
Thank you, Awurama. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Does anyone else have something to share? I'll read off the chat box while we get this. So we're getting lots of white Europeans muted. Does anyone else want to share? So yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I will say that growing up here, it wasn't just that it was told from their perspective, but that they were sort of sold as like the heroes of the story. So like it was not objective at all. And in hindsight, like we really were told that, you know, like the cowboys were the heroes of the story a lot of the time, you know.
Thanks
or for that matter, like the priests were the heroes of the story. That would be the other part. I grew up in a Catholic town, so it was very Christian-centric and specifically Catholic-centric.
Thank you, Leah, for that. Anyone else? And you can also touch on the brief history. If you had comments about the history, is that something that you had known about Black Canadian history? Because I know a lot of us probably didn't know that we had such a huge, rich history within Canada that's specific to Canada, because we mostly, if we're learning about history, it's mostly about the United States and the slave movement there, not necessarily about the Black Canadian history. So any comments to share about those two specific subjects? Go ahead and unmute your mics or put it in the chat box there.
Well, I know in high school that we learned, there's like a little section on Black history. You learn about, I think the woman who was in Nova Scotia who refused to get up from a movie theater. Like, we learn about like those little instances, but not this rich history that we have. So oftentimes you think most Black Canadians immigrated from different Black states around the world.
Yeah, I know even from my experiences in a small, rural, mostly white town, that there was little to no conversation about race or racism that existed in our communities and in Canada and Alberta. But then also, even I didn't find out until a couple years ago, actually, that there's a small little village called Breton right next to my town. And that was actually originally started and farmed and ranched entirely by a Black community who had then been pushed out of that community and actively pushed out of that community. And so that's a conversation that was not only relevant to Alberta, but was relevant to my direct community. It was never conversed or talked about, which would have been a great lesson to learn. So, and great people to learn about. So yeah, it's like hearing that whole history was, I mean, there's some of it that I knew from working at Actions and having to do some research myself, but I just wish there was so much more that I would have actually learned in school.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. We have a comment here from Leah that, well, okay, I think there's a conversation going about Black histories not documented in the Royal Alberta Museum, and Shayla says there's actually a Black history exhibit from Amber Valley at the Royal Alberta Museum. And then we have another comment here. I think because of the extent of suffering of the Aboriginals endured in Canada in comparison to the USA, as well as the extent of racism Black people endured in the USA, I think the Black history in Canada is just silenced by weighing the suffering, which is wrong. And yes, you do make sense, Ashley. Any other comments before we move on?
Hi there. My name is Jasbir Diol. I'm MLA for Edmonton Meadows, and I'm the critic for multiculturalism for the opposition party. And thank you for the opportunity. Actually, I'm so honored to be part of this. Just wanted to add a comment, but is my understanding as an individual on history. History is written by the ruling classes all the time, and in this particular case, just as white dominant, you know, uh, the how would I say, the establishments all the time. But I have seen, never heard about Black history. Not only that, the the huge incidents of like Komagata Marus, even now the parliament has to apologize on that. And I don't think the students in classes ever heard about those incidents, and the communities they suffered head attacks. There was no lesson near in schools. On top of that, it has been my hobby, talking to people and visiting reserves, talking to indigenous people. And I visited some of the schools in the reserves within those communities and spoken with teachers who are teaching cultures and history, and they could not find anything specific that could give me any information regarding their own culture and their own history. So we can even see it, we can judge it when the current government in Alberta are trying to appoint the kind of people, how they wanted to influence the review of the curriculums in schools. So that's my understanding. If we want to change something, we definitely need to participate. Thank you for this, doing this. And we also need to make sure that we send our representative to the places they can influence the decisions. Without doing that, it is not possible.
Thank you so much, MLA Jasper, and thank you for joining us in this call. We're very honored, and we're also honored to have you, MLA Janice Irwin, as well. Thank you for joining us. I believe I have a hand up. Is the hand still up? I think it's from Andrea, is it?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Do I still have the hand up? No?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
No, we're hearing you very faintly.
Can you hear
Are
me
you
now?
still there, Andrea?
Is that better?
No, still quite faint. Okay, well, Andrea is getting her mic there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, throughout school, I had no clue. I'm Canadian born, but my parents are from Ghana, West Africa, and I had no clue. And then my sister actually married a Canadian, well, a Black Canadian, whose parents were actually descendants of the Oklahoman slaves that came to Alberta, and they settled in Amber Valley. And I believe somebody was talking about the exhibit in the museum, which is actually that family. And I was like, I had no clue. We did not talk about it. The fact that we're in Alberta and there was such a rich Black community, it was just really shocking to me. But now, of course, I'm glad to be a part of this family now. But it's so sad that uh, Black people, even immigrants that have come to Alberta, like kind of feel like um, there was no place for them, or at least like they're having to start off on their own, adventuring in Alberta. Meanwhile, there's people here that took up roots, and like even in Calgary they started the first railroad, and the postal system in Calgary, and nobody has any clue. And it's just, yeah, it's really, really sad. But I was just shocked that, like, yeah, born in Edmonton and never knew about it.
Never knew about it, right? Yes. Well, it's a good thing we're having this conversation today. So, as we mentioned, history is taught. If there's any other comments, just feel free to bud me. That's perfectly fine, because I won't be able to see your hand. So we can take a closer look at statistics, specifically the lower average total income of Black Canadians in comparison to non-visible minorities being lower, and hence the cycle goes on. The cycle is affected by difficulties landing jobs. We've heard of being the right fit, right? Well, sometimes the right fit unconsciously in the form of unconscious bias. So that's affinity bias, halo effect, name bias, perception bias, confirmation bias, or sometimes it's consciously. That right fit, it has no accent, it looks a certain way, it dresses a certain way, and sometimes the right fit is just that. It's a look and a culture for that seamless integration with the majority. So that system also ties into privilege and not having to worry about that, right? So it becomes a cycle, a system that gives more privilege to one race ends up oppressing the other, smaller races. It's not overt, it's not in your face, but it's equally as damaging. It's liberal racism. I'll take any other comments, questions, and discussion points here before we dive into another portion of the program. There was a comment on the chat box. Someone mentioned that they did study To Kill a Mockingbird in school. We did as well, but again, that's the US, that's not Canadian. Yes, and someone just, Sarah mentioned that as well. Yes, absolutely. I had no idea, so grateful to be here. We're happy to have you too, Leah. So any other comments before we move into a Black girl's experience in Canada? Go ahead and unmute your mic.
I just have maybe a quick comment just about culture fit and how that's often referred to in hiring, but it's true. I mean, that even just looking for culture fit without actually understanding any of the biases that go with it, it can be such a exclusionary process. So I hope businesses are kind of going away from that and looking at more of the pieces involved in hiring instead. So.
Thank you, Christina. Well, the idea of what you would be looking for, what organizations should be striving for is when they're saying cultural fit is to have representation, right? So when you do have representation, then you've broadened your scope as an organization and you're able to really dive into and be more innovative and grow larger. So hopefully their cultural fit ideally is regarded that way. Any other comments? Thanks, Christina.
I just want to comment about the immigrant Black experience as well. It's a little bit different with many barriers, like the accent, the lack of knowledge of the history of the land, and other cultural barriers. So it's very interesting how the Black Canadians were born here, and that's all they knew, as opposed to the people who come here suddenly and kind of faced with this issue. So it's, yeah, just wanted to bring that to light as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lule.
I wanted to say something based on what she just said. I've also realized that the Africans, like the immigrants that come into Canada, it's like they are Black people who were born here and all they knew was that history and that past. But then you have Africans who come in and it's like they have to learn that such racism exists. Because based on what my cousin is saying, what my extended family says, back in Africa, we don't really experience that racism, right? So I don't know if anyone agrees with this, but this is what I've just observed. But then when immigrants come to North America or US, it's like racism all of a sudden just exists, but back home is not a thing.
Anyone want to comment on Ashley's perspective?
I can. I also feel like in Africa, like it's more about class than race. Like there's more division of classes here in Africa, but like in America, it's like both an issue of race and class combined. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Fafali. I hope I'm pronouncing your name
Yeah,
correctly.
that's correct.
Very good. Anyone else care to have an opinion or express themselves in any other way before we move on to the experiences of Black girls here in Canada?
Hi, my name's Geraldine. Did I just get booted out?
No, you're on there, Geraldine. Go ahead. Oh, I guess she did. Oh, hopefully she comes back. I don't want to miss anyone. So if there's no one else, is there anyone else that wants to say something before we move? So very good. So having touched on that sort of theoretic aspect of our discussion, we're going to dive into real experiences of Black Canadians, and we're going to watch a video from some of our very own ABG participants, and they'll share some of their experiences growing up in Canada.
Hello, my name is Abigail, and I'm a first-generation Canadian. My parents moved here from Jamaica to Canada.
Hello, my name is Amina Mohammed. I'm 18 years old, and I was born and raised here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. My name is Timida Mohammed. I am a Somali Canadian, and I was born and raised in Canada.
Hi, my name is Arwa. I am Canadian by birth and Eritrean by descent, meaning I have lived here my entire life.
My name is Vanessa Lewis, and I am a first-generation Canadian of Jamaican descent, and I have lived in Canada my entire life.
I was born here, so I was always used to being in like a multicultural environment or predominantly white environment. Being Black wasn't my main identifier I had for myself growing up. I was kind of like, I'm just a little girl trying to play with other little girls. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, I realized that the other kids had accepted Black as their primary identifier for me. I've been referred to like, oh, like that Black girl over there, or like this is my Black friend. It was just interesting having race become a primary identifier that was used by others.
Being Black in Canada is odd because you experience so many microaggressions, but then the overall narrative is we're all equal, we're all treated equal, we're all the same. When you're Black in Canada, you experience anti-Blackness from white people and people of color, and even sometimes from your own community. Canada is very good at pretending that we're not racist and that diversity is what we thrive off and it's our strength and this, and this, but we're not good. To be Black in Canada is to understand and to experience on a daily basis the reality of racism, and yet to constantly have those experiences erased. Canada is like this benevolent, peaceful country, and so part of that reputation means that there's this refusal to own up to the current reality, the present reality of racism. Not racism as a distant reality, but as a constant everyday thing that people experience, and that can be really frustrating.
Being Black and Muslim is quite unique in my own experience, as it acts as a double-edged sword, as I am being deemed as a threat while also being deemed as the oppressed girl. Either or, it's still racism. Positively, it has really made me realize how beautiful my identities are, and knowing that I come from a community that is so loving and come from a background that is so rich in history and culture. But of course, it does have a negative impact, as there is always a target on your back, especially being a Muslim woman and a Black woman as well.
I would say growing up in Canada has been good overall. However, that hasn't stopped me from experiencing racism here in Canada, whether it's covert or overt. I would say being Black in Canada has taught me to be resilient, especially when facing adversities. It has taught me to be kind when I am faced with fear or hate. It has taught me to be empathetic in understanding others' pains, as well as joyous in celebrating others' differences and similarities.
Wow. I'm going to open the floor up to anyone that has something to share with regards to what we just heard. Is this surprising to some of us? Is it an eye-opener, or is it something that you've experienced personally, or you've seen someone experience it? Go ahead, unmute your mic.
Yeah, I can kind of agree to Arwa, when I believe it was Arwa who said it, how you don't only feel oppressed or have these experiences with non-Black people, but also with people within your community as well. I know because I'm also Eritrean as well, and I feel like in the Eritrean community, there's a lot of like colorism as well. So it's not only just from Black and whites, but you get it within your community as well. So just agree with what she said.
Thank you, Hermela. Geraldine, you're back? I see in the comment there, Geraldine, that you're back. If you wanted to share what you wanted to share earlier, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm not quite sure if you heard anything of what I said, but I was just stating that growing up in Jamaica, even though it's a predominantly Black culture, even the context of our education system and our interaction with tourists at that time, we knew, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, that the white culture was predominant to the Black culture, and it was also embedded in our school system. Our books were all European books, and all the heroes in the book were white. And I remember at a very young age thinking to myself, how comes we don't have books that show our skin color, saying that we're beautiful, and saying that we're important? It was always taught of how Christopher Columbus came and rescued and saved us from being barbaric. So even the predominantly Black culture, it's interesting how that you are taught racism, or you're taught to feel inferior. And so when I migrated to Edmonton at the age of 13, I came with that inferiority complex, and to the point of my confident level, I became really introvert, very shy, thinking what I had to say as a Black girl didn't value, and not hearing Black history in the school really damaged my confidence.
Wow. Thank you, Geraldine, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Piece of your history. And I think what you're saying really does tie into that aspect of colonization, right? Any other comments before we go on to, yeah, go ahead,
I
Tolu.
would like to add something. So I came to Canada in 2016, and I have experienced the racism with people and also at the workplace. Like the last experience I had, I just had to leave the place. And I know the effect of these on self-esteem, like Geraldine said. It affects your self-confidence. So I have a 7-year-old, like moved to Calgary in this month, and she started school that was yesterday. And I'm afraid, is she going to face the same thing? So when she came back from school yesterday, I was asking her, how was your first day in school? Did you make friends? I did not want to fill her with the idea that, yes, racism exists, people will treat you this way. And I also want to make sure that she's prepared. So like Geraldine, it affects your self-esteem. Even if you are an extrovert, if you're confident in your abilities, as soon as you start facing it and you see that every day that is what you battle with, before you know it, you're sinking down. Like you find yourself always in the low places. So the question is, how do we help the upcoming like Black girls, colored girls, because I believe it's not just the Black girls that faces this, it's everyone who is colored. So how do we help and encourage them and make them realize that it's not about you, and make sure they've developed this thick skin so that even if they face it, they know how to like maneuver, how to get out of it, and how to also hold their head high no matter what happens.
Thank you so much, Tolu. I'm also a mom of 2 girls, so I know what you're speaking of. That's a good bridgeway to our next segment, which is moving forward. What can we do about anti-Black racism? So Martin Luther King said history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of bad people, but the appalling silence of the good. Staying silent is communication. Now, speaking out and speaking up won't always look the same for all of us. I personally, for example, I'm not a big social media person, but instead I have these conversations. So that's my voice. So whatever you can find your voice to intentionally speak on it, use it, because staying silent communicates something. It's also taking a position that does not help anti-racism. So speaking up and against racism starts with an individual. Self-reflecting. Remember those emotions that we were speaking of earlier? Understand those, unpack them, address them introspectively. We all have biases. Take the Harvard implicit bias. It'll be part of the resources that we send out. The other thing that we could do is stay educated, read, learn, constantly seek to intentionally teach yourself, not just yourself, for those who are parents, your children, right? What is white privilege? What is colorblindness? What is implicit bias? What do the stats say, et cetera, et cetera? Read for yourself, learn for yourself. It's also starting with that acknowledgement element, acknowledging the past in order to acknowledge the present. Yes, there will be people that will taint the overall message. There will be people that do wrong. Choosing to focus on the riots alone is a choice that doesn't necessarily seek to address change. Rioters and looters, they've been happening in our towns here in Edmonton after an Oilers game all the time. It happens, right? Encourage fair representation. We touched on representation a bit. We have a diverse community. So if we live in a diverse community, the organizations that we support should also be representative of that. If you have Black friends, for those who aren't Black, if you have Black friends, give them a call. Ask them how they're feeling or how you can be an ally. If you have no idea what to say that. I have no idea what to say or where to begin, but I can't say nothing at all, right? If you see or you hear racism, let it be your business. Reject it, denounce it, because turning a blind eye is also communicating something. The last thing that I have before I open the floor up is question your rebuttals and your resistance. Well, the BLM is really a political movement. Well, it's not really that bad in Canada. Well, statistics are this, that, and next thing. Ask yourself why you are resisting the bottom underlying message of despair and hurt from Black people that has existed for years. So I'll open it up to the floor, and before I pass it on to Ngabe, if there's any other comments with regards to practical steps that we can take.
I think one of the things that can be done is more resources and into the education system, because as someone who's an immigrant to Canada, one thing that I know a lot of immigrant people face, especially young people when they're going to the education system, is the barrier of not being believed for credentials. And this is across all, even people who aren't, people trying to enter the workforce or people trying to go in for higher education. I know, like what was mentioned before about colonization. I come from Uganda, so we were colonized by the British. Majority of the country speaks English, but when I come here, they don't see me as Ugandan. So the first thing any immigrant comes here, especially Black immigrants, they'll test your language proficiency in school. And I can see how that can be a big barrier to people if, let's say, they don't meet the standard for language proficiency, but that's not a measure of how smart they are. So that takes them back. So that could be an aspect that can be addressed when dealing with institutionalized racism.
Perfect. May I add something?
Yep, go ahead, Geraldine.
So I love how you spoke about letting your voice being heard in whatever capacity that you're passionate about it being heard. So as a result of the emotions and the racism that I faced and the lack of education in school, I remember when I became a mom, I'm thinking, I don't want that to be repeated for my children. So one thing I started is grab opportunities when they're presented to you. So in light of Black History Month, what I had started is a program of going around to different schools during Black History Month, and it's a starting place. And I was sharing exactly what you were sharing is Black history, Canadian Black history, having African drummers coming in. Every year we highlight a different African dance or Caribbean dance or something, and that would be the program that I would go from school to school during Black history and offer those programs. And that is something that I wrote and got a grant through National Black Coalition. So as a parent, you could start in your home by first educating your child. And when you educate and empower your child, then they will be able to communicate with other children who might not be able to have parents who are knowledgeable of that. So start with your family, then start with your school community. And as a result of me doing the program in some school, I had other principals who were calling to ask, can you bring about those programs into our school? And this has been going on for about 8 years, and it's picking up more and more every year. And when I go to school, and I'm also going to ask that when we speak, not just speak from a place of anger, because when they only hear your anger, they don't hear the value of the message that you're bringing. So as you were saying, reflect on yourself and be intentional of wanting to share and empower, not to demean the other race, but to bring a level of understanding. And from engaging in collaboration with principals at the school my children attend, I have those conversations. I have an HR background of saying, have a diversity in the representation of the school community that you have. So if you have Hispanic in your school, it's great to have an Hispanic teacher. So, and as a result of that, at my Holy Cross school this year, the principal actually called and said, hey, we have 7 Black teachers at our school at Holy Cross this year. And it's so amazing. So I'm saying, take whatever step that you could take as an individual, and it might not be out in the public, it might just be in your little sphere of influence. So there are many solutions.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Thank
Hi,
you.
can I add something to that?
Yep. Go ahead.
It's not to Geraldine, but to the lady that spoke before. She was commenting about institutionalized racism and language. I wanted to ask her what ideas she had in terms of doing something about the institutionalized racism, because language is a very important aspect of effective communication, and I think it's important that people are tested for their language proficiency. As in, do it if you're coming to Canada, you should be able to speak English. If you're going to Kenya, you should be able to speak Swahili as well. If you're going to Germany, you should be able to speak German, because, for example, in the health field, you have someone's life in your hands. If you cannot communicate with them, that's going to be a problem. So I wanted to understand her points exactly.
Okay, why don't we do this then, Ashley, because we're coming to the top of the hour here. If we can continue this discussion after the hour, because I don't want to keep people past 1 o'clock. We were hoping to keep you for 1, but obviously this is a conversation for years packed into one hour. So we're gonna move to the next bit just to learn more about EBG, and then after the program, then we'll go back and discuss, Ashley, for those who want to stay after that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure thing.
Sounds good. Okay, so I'll pass it over to you, Ngabe.
Thank you, Christabel. Thank you, everyone, for your sharing your experiences, stories, and so this is very interesting. But we have to move on, and I would like to introduce. We have a number of speakers today from Empowering Black Girls. The first one is our own mentor, one of our own mentors, Lul. And by the way, Geraldine and Lul and Christabel are mentors for EPG. So thank you so much for being here. So Lul she is a psychotherapist with more than 10 years of experience in the field. She has a master's degree in psychology, and it has been an honor, and it's still an honor to have you, Lul, as one of my mentors. So the mic is yours. Tell us what it has been for you to be a mentor for EBG and why you chose to join us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ngabe. And thank you, everyone. I have learned a lot, Christabel. It was perfect. I like your facilitation and the information that you provided. Yeah, why I decided to be part of this mentorship program is because I have been mentored by other Black women who came before me, both here in Canada and abroad, meaning my original country. And I think it's very, very important, looking back, to have somebody that you can see and also hear experiences of the challenges, the strength, and the hurdles that they faced, and to know where they are at. So it's very important to have that model in your mind, so that it's very hopeful and it's really encouraging. So I've been blessed with that, and I'm still in that process of being mentored by other Black women. So I felt like this is a very small thing that I can offer and be part of. And in addition, I'm also a mom, so it's very personal and close to my heart that this kind of work is very important. Thank you.
And how has it been for you? What has been your experience?
Yes, I think I was amazed by the young girls in terms of their courage and their experience. The times that I met with them in the groups, I think they have a lot that they might take for granted, in a sense, as small things, but they have a lot, and I really was impressed by their courage. So it's really inspiring for me to see Black girls speak up and really boldly share their struggles or their aspirations. So I think more than what I give, I am more appreciative of the hope that I see in the other girls. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lul. And I totally agree. I share the same feelings, and it has been really very rewarding for me to be part of EBG. I would like to welcome Amma. Amma is one of the EBG young women in the first cohort. Amma, I want to thank you first, not only for being here, but for the video we watched. Amma is the one who put it together, so she did an amazing job, so thank you so much. And Amma is very smart, very, I want to say deep, and very passionate about empowering younger people, empowering youth, empowering Black youth. And thank you for being part of EBG. I'd like you to share with us your experience in just 2 minutes, what it has been for you and why you joined EBG. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Agave. There's so much to say, but I'll do my best to compress it. So originally I was asked to be part of EPG to present like a seminar or a workshop on hair. Black hair is something I'm very passionate about. But as time went on, it became very clear that this is something that was more important than just a seminar or a workshop on one specific thing, because it's very holistic. EPG is very holistic. So the opportunity to spend time with girls that are both younger than you or both and older than you, that come from different careers, lifestyles, walks of life, life goals, is very important, and it's very collaborative. So for me personally, I've had like the opportunity, which I'm very grateful for, to be with Black people of my certain ethnic group, or Black people of my certain like educational group even, but not so much Black people where we were so diverse. And that was very important to me in EPG, where so many people see us Black girls as like one thing, but I could go to an EPG session and maybe not even know what was being talked about and not understand, but come away from that with so much knowledge and so much community and so much understanding. And that's really challenging, I think, the perception of what Black girls are. We're not just one thing, we're very complicated, we're very diverse, in the best way, I should say. And that's really important to me, the community and the sistership, and just the leaning on each other. Even though we're different, we still have this foundational and the same understanding of who we are. And that's something that's very great to learn from.
Thank you so much, Amma. Thank you. And I would like to also invite Soliana. Soliana, are you here? Soliana? Oh, I can't hear you. Hello, Soliana? Oh no, we can't hear you. So maybe while you figure it out, the microphone, we go to Rhea. Rhea is one of the EPG young in the first cohort. And Rhea is very engaged and committed to making a difference to a community. And we saw that in everything, you know, everything you said and everything you did. And Rhea also took, led a project, one of the projects for EPG, and it was an amazing project. Thank you so much to you and to the other girls. And I'd like to give you this opportunity to tell us a little bit about, you know, just briefly about yourself and why you joined EPG, and then you talk also about the project, and then you can present to us the short video. Thank you. Oh, you're muted.
Hi everyone, my name is Rhea Sempala. I joined EPG because I wanted to see more people who looked like me, gain more experiences, just as Amra said, be part of that sisterhood. And like I was not disappointed in my experience. That's what I have to say. And for the projects that we did, it was a food delivery project. So our program ran into the months where COVID was starting. And so some of us girls, we thought about, okay, what can we do to give back to the community? What can we do to help during this pandemic? So we teamed up with the Habesher Market. And so we were giving food supplies to families who needed it, families and individuals who needed it. So a group of us went around and we went to different houses or apartment complexes giving food relief to the families who needed this. And one thing that I think all of us took from that was the feeling of community that we all felt, because oftentimes we don't see how connected we all are, but as we can see that one of the most affected populations during COVID is the immigrant population. So you see how thankful people are to be helped with the food relief. You see how they're like so thankful. Even now they say we're so proud of the girls that give back to the community. So in that aspect, it was a very good learning experience for all the girls involved.
Thank you so much, Ware. And we're so proud of you and the amazing work that you guys are doing. Let's watch the very short video about the project. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra. Hi, my name is Raya. Hey, I'm Aliana. Hi, everyone. My name is Delexi, and I'm the youth leader here at the EBG program. So, Delexi, when you first signed up for the EBG projects, why did you pick this project? Ooh, that's a good question. I decided to pick this project because I felt like I needed to be more involved in the community, and I thought it was the best way to actually like be out there and help the community.
It was definitely like a lot of collaboration. Like this isn't something that it can't be a one-man show. Like it forces you, you know, in terms of like, I even feel like developing communication skills, being able to split up tasks. It's just, it becomes engaging as well as you're giving back to people who actually like really need the help. Kind of thing.
I think it was very important that it was specifically a group of Black girls, because you often in Canada or in Edmonton, you don't really see a group of Black girls doing something for the community like that.
My favorite part was where you go to the house and meet these amazing people who are open to be helped. And then you see their beautiful faces and smiling, happy to get the things they're getting.
Hi. Okay. Just say it. Oh, we literally could walk there from here. 3-minute walk. Oh, okay. Hello? Hi. I think it's this apartment. But I think the door is there.
Because every day we're able to conversate on different topics, why we're doing what we're doing, and reflect on a lot of things that I'm not able to reflect maybe sometimes with my friends. And then I feel like it'll be different if we do it with a different group. I mean, the impact is still there because we're helping the community, but it is I feel like it's a bonus that we're able to do it with other young Black women. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much to Jerusalem and Justina, who are helping us behind the scene, if I could say. I would like to invite Bethel. Bethel is also one of the amazing young Black women in the EBG, the first cohort. And Bethel has been it has been a pleasure to have you at EBG. She always brought a smile, and she always helped around, and she was so committed to the whole thing. And thank you so much for being here, Bethel. And we would like to invite you to talk to us a little bit about the project that you started as from empowering Black girls to empowering Black youth. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ngabe. So hi everyone, my name is Bethel.
I'll just talk about my experience at EBG very shortly first. So the reason I joined is because I felt that it would be a safe space where I could meet other Black girls and we could have like meaningful conversations. And I felt that it would be a place where I wouldn't have to like constantly explain myself or my experience, but somewhere where I feel understood. And I would also come and I gained like a lot of understanding about myself through coming to EBG. Through all the workshops that we had, I just feel like it was like a very healing space, and all the conversations. Like I remember I got emotional a lot of times because I was like, I just felt like that was a lot of growth happening and conversations that like had to be had that we haven't been able to have. And I think it really helped me grow my confidence, my self-esteem, and that helped me be able to hold like leadership positions. Like I was very afraid to hold leadership positions before this, and then like believing in myself more and understanding myself more through EBG has given me the growth and confidence to do that. And through my EBG experience, one of the main thoughts that I had is like, if we had these kind of workshops as a kid, like it would have made such a big difference for all of us. And I think many of us were thinking that. And so that's why when Ngabe told us about an opportunity with grants, so Edmonton community grants, that we could have our own project, we decided to start something called Empowering Black Youth. So it would be like EBG, but for younger kids, boys and girls. And with this, we just wish that we could help the kids gain self-confidence and just to feel like that comfort in themselves at a younger age, because we feel like they can do so much more if they learn that at a younger age, and it would be really beneficial. So hopefully we'll have workshops, and we're gonna have mentors too, and just to like have them know that they matter and somewhere that they are celebrated. So like unfortunately in society, it's like sometimes you have to learn to accept your skin color or your hair. But maybe if we have this EBY program at a younger age, they'll be able to accept themselves, and we like have faith that in the future they'll be able to do great things with confidence and with self-esteem that we can build through our workshops.
Thank you so much, Bethel. And I just want you to know, and everyone from EBG, that we are very proud of you and will support you. And yeah, so it's not going to be just an experience of 6 months, but I think a lifetime experience, and we'll always be there to help. Thank you. Christabel, back to you.
Last question. Yes. So I want to apologize for keeping you past the hour. We're hoping to keep you only for an hour, and we are respectful of your time. So moving forward. So as we move forward, let's begin by acknowledging the role racism plays in our society, in our communities, and in our families. So by acknowledging, we can self-reflect, right? And we can identify where we contribute to the problem. So by educating ourselves, we can speak up against racism and do our part in creating a better future for not just our country, but our community, for our families. It starts with each and every one of us. So thank you again for spending this hour with us, and for all who supported the event, a big thank you to you as well. We will email out some resources and guides for you. We hope you were enlightened, educated, encouraged. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. An email address will be put in the chat box there for you. So from myself and everyone at Action for Healthy Communities with the EBG program, have a nice day. Now, Ashley, I know you had a question for, so for those who want to stick around and hear what Ashley's question was, you can go ahead and do so. Otherwise, feel free to go on your.
Oh, I don't want to keep anybody. People gotta go. They gotta go. It's okay. No, it's just because she had just mentioned something. Like everything she was saying was making sense. She just lost me at the part where she was like that something had to be done about the language proficiency test. And I was just saying that I just feel like language is a very key aspect of communication. Like just as they expect us to learn English when we come to North America or US, I would expect them to learn Swahili or learn an African language if they go into any African country to work there or live there. So that's just what I was getting at. I just wanted to understand where she was coming from.
is it Ashley?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Ashley. So my example for the language proficiency was more of a critique of the education system and how it kind of alienates immigrants who come from countries maybe that don't speak English. So in my personal experience is that I came here already knowing English. So that wasn't a problem so much for me, but someone who maybe comes from a country where maybe they don't speak English, or maybe they don't speak French, or maybe they don't speak any language any of the two official languages that are spoken in Canada, they have more trouble getting into the education. And it's not to say that they should not learn English or they shouldn't learn how to navigate. It's more of the judgment that comes off not knowing how to speak English. So if you're coming into the education system, maybe you're going to maybe not so much elementary, but maybe junior high or high school, you're given a language proficiency test to see if you can speak English. But where I was stating my point was that if your test comes out that you're not proficient in English or French, you are often put into a stream in that you are put into a lower stream because of your lack of language proficiency, which is not reflective of your true maybe intellectual proficiency. So that really pushes back a lot of new immigrants or a lot of young immigrants, and puts them at a disadvantage within the education system. So that was the point that I was making.
That makes perfect sense now. Thanks. I get what you're saying now.
And I would also like to
can I
add
say something?
Yeah, was that Asha or Tolu? Asha,
So go
right?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, so I'm not from Edmonton. I moved here like a couple months ago. I'm from Toronto, and speaking on this, I was born here in Canada, but I've had experiences where, and this is in Toronto, where one of my good friends was put into ESL, which is English as a second language. She was from Uganda, and she speaks English, and she knew fluent English, but she was put there just because of the assumption that she didn't know English. And I think that's kind of like, I'm trying to connect this conversation to a larger issue. I've had another friend who, she's from Jamaica, and just because she speaks patois, the assumption is that she doesn't know English because they didn't understand her, you know? So I think it's not only, like, I don't know if they do testing here, but sometimes the assumption will put little kids in ESL.
Yeah. And can I add to that too quickly? So I moved here over 30 years ago. So I moved here in 1987, again from Jamaica, and exactly what you're saying. It was the assumption when I went to enroll in school that because I was from Jamaica, we speak Patois, and I didn't know the language. I wasn't asked a question. I wasn't given a test. And so my parents, who are immigrant, who doesn't know the school system, took me to school, and I had to be the advocate for myself at 13 years old because my parents didn't know the education system here. And I remember going into the office, and the principal who was enrolling me said to me, "What grade were you in Jamaica?" I said, grade 8. And she automatically said to my parents, without a conversation or a test, that means we have to put her in grade 6. Good enough that I had the confidence at that time to ask the question at 13 years old and says, why are you putting me 2 grades behind when I'm in grade 8? And she just says, it is our practice to put Jamaicans 2 grades behind. And I said to her at that time, I was armed with my report card, a 13-year-old. Good thing I bought my report card from Jamaica, because I went to a private school where my parents paid a lot of money for us to have a good education. And I showed her my report card and I says, look, I'm an honored student, I'm an A student. And on the spot, I said to her, give me a math test, give me an English test. And if I fail it, then you could make the appropriate decision as to what class. But I don't think every 13-year-old would feel empowered to have this conversation in a new community. And so the principal said to me, okay, we will put you in the class and we'll give you a month to prove yourself. I super exceed beyond that month to the fact that I ended up getting honors within the 2 weeks. So I was able to advocate for myself. In the absence of my younger brother being able to advocate for himself, he was put into a special need class. And that devastated him to this current day. He's 44, and he didn't need a special need class. He just had a lisp that he wasn't able to make certain pronunciation of his words correctly, but that blacklisted him for the rest of his life educational wise. So I appreciate what you guys are saying, because we experienced that.
All right. So just to add to what Geraldine, Ashley, and sorry, your name is showing us iPhone.
Raya.
Raya, just to add to what you guys said, Ashley is actually right. Yes, you need to learn how to speak the local, like the language of the community where you want to go to. However, my own problem, I won't really call it a problem, but I think we are beginning to like equate your ability to speak English with high intellect. So meaning that if you speak very good English without accent, then that means you are intelligent, and whoever speaks English with an accent is less intellectual. So that's my concern. And like Geraldine said, if you're able to advocate for yourself, for me, I made up my mind based on my experience that I am going to be my daughter's advocate. I am going to speak out to her, speak out on her behalf. So anytime maybe she goes to school or she comes back from school, I'm asking, how was your day? Did you just to learn what's going on so that I can encourage her and also guide her in the right direction and speak out for her. But we have a lot of kids, like Geraldine's brother, that they don't even know what's going on. So I believe we need to create this awareness. And like I said, it's not from the position of anger or aggression, but just creating the awareness and letting these kids know what their rights are and the fact that they need to speak out. No one is going to do it for them. So I tried going online right now to check if I could get the website, because I'm not sure, like majority of the participants are from Edmonton. Am I right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so in Calgary, I don't know, like what can we do to help these the kids growing up, just to encourage them and also let them realize that they need to speak out and advocate for themselves?
Personally, I don't think that it should be the kids' responsibility to advocate for themselves. I think there should already be policies within the education system that can help them move along, because it puts the responsibility on the children when it's where they should not have that kind of responsibility that young of an age.
Yeah, you're right, Raya, on that. There should be like a system in place. However, when you leave things to the system, when we assume that, okay, the system will take care of the whole situation, what I believe is, like the way the racism that's going on in Canada, because no one is talking, like we believe that everything is good, the system is in charge, like it will continue. So that's why I believe, like, though it's not fair to put the responsibility on the kids, but I think they should be aware, not just leaving it to the system alone.
Can I just,
go ahead.
okay. I was just gonna respond to Tolu. When she was talking about how whenever her kids go to school, she always asks the kids, how's school? And well, that just reminded me of when I first moved to Canada. I think I was 13 and I was going to school, junior high. And my mom, whenever I come back from school, my mom would always ask me, how was school? Are you getting bullied? What's happening? Like, because she's been in the Western world for almost, like, at that time, she's been in the Western world for about, say, 12 years. So she kind of, knows about these experiences. And anyways, when she would be asking us these questions, me and my brothers, even though we were experiencing things, I don't know, for some reason, we didn't really voice our experiences to her, or even when we did, we would, sugarcoat it. So I remember, again, just moving from Nigeria to Canada, I was 13. I remember in school, I was really, really shy. I couldn't really understand, the Canadian accent. I didn't have any friends. I remember, like, in the first week of school, I would actually eat lunch in the washroom. It actually happened. But yeah, I never told my mom any of that. She'll be like, "Oh, how was school?" I'll be like, "Oh yeah, school was fine. School was fine." So I was just, responding to Tolu. When you ask your daughter, I believe, how was school, how does she respond to that? And do you truly believe, what she's saying?
So one, like I said, I came from Winnipeg, so I was not really like particular about the answers because she has Black friends, like Nigerian friends, a lot of them, and they were in the same class. So, but she always tell me that, oh, it's good, it's great. And yesterday was her first day here in Calgary in school. And she was like, yeah, fine. I said, oh, did you make friends? She said, yes. And like you said, I asked her, can you tell me the names of the friends you made? She couldn't tell me anything. She couldn't.
Yeah.
So, you're right.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that was just one of the other things I experienced. And with regards to, I can't remember the conversation that was just being had about the system and the kids' responsibility. I think it's everyone's responsibility. The mother or the father, the parents, the children, and also the system. Because the school I went to had only, like, okay, so it was me, two of my brothers, and maybe like 3 more Black kids in predominantly white school of about maybe 600, 700 people, 700 kids. There wasn't any, programs or groups or, like places that would make us feel at home or in touch with our people or that kind of stuff. So I think it should be everyone's responsibility. The school should, do what they can to try to accommodate you as much as possible.
Hey, OG, I kind of relate with what you're saying because I went to high school in Toronto, and my mom used to ask me every day, "Are you good? How was school?" All that stuff, and I would always lie to her because being in an African home, it's like you're expected to be strong, stand up for yourself, don't let anyone put you down. So I'd always lie to my mom, like, "Oh yeah, it was good. It was a great day. I did this, I did that." But then behind the scenes, I was being bullied, and being bullied by not even like a Caucasian person, but like my own African sister or someone from Congo. But she was very, I guess in urban terms, whitewashed. She would do things like go tanning because she wanted to fit in with the white crew and not be cast out or whatever. So I would say that parents need to really dig in to their kids and find out how their kids are actually. My mom found out through my Twitter because she went to Twitter to insult me, right? So I would say that parents should really, in high school and in primary school, parents should really, really dig in to their kids' lives. I don't care about that whole knock knock on my door, mom, if you want to come in. No, screw that. I think parents should really like dig into their kids' lives and make sure that they're okay. I'm not saying run their lives, but to really follow up with it. Because I lied to my mom. I told her I was cool. If my mom did not interfere, if the school, police, and my mom did not interfere, I probably would be a different person today. So I think a lot of immigrant kids specifically are being bullied, and they don't want to say anything because I don't know. I don't even know why I didn't even say anything. I can't even give you a reason. But it's just like knowing that someone who's supposed to be like me, same color, but she's trying to be someone else and be like someone else because she's trying to fit in and not be bullied herself. She put that on me, and it wasn't even right. So yeah.
That's interesting that you said that, because that 30 years ago, that was my exact experience. And I don't know how recent that was for you. And so that's where I find groups like this very empowering, that we learn to unite with our own, to create a safe place with our own, because it was my own that bullied me also in junior high coming here. And I would imagine it's because she herself wanted to feel fit in. And the whole reason of not telling our parents, I remember feeling life was so hard enough for my parents. I didn't want to add additional stress to their life. They were already working so many jobs, brought us to Canada to create a better life for us. So I didn't want that pressure of telling them that it's not better. I would rather be home in Jamaica, because you didn't want to seem ungrateful, whatever that reason was. So I think part of the solution that we can provide is support for Black parents to know how to engage in meaningful dialogue with their children about their emotional wellness, because in our culture, often that's not a place that our parents are equipped in knowing the right question to ask. It's just, how was school? We say good and they move on.
Yeah, you're very right. I think something is just something is to be a bridge for Black parents able to speak to their kids. Because honestly, like for me, I had to run. I ran to a neighbor because we live in a condo. So I ran to a neighbor. I was too scared to go to school. So I would run to a neighbor and tell this younger neighbor, because she was more younger and I guess maybe more teen-like to me in my eyes. I felt like, okay, I could tell her. And then she told my mom, and then, they joined forces. And then, so it's just like, why didn't I just go to my mom the first? Like, my mom's cool, like, she was there for me. She helped me through, so I was just like, I think there needs to be some kind of bridge of communication for Black parents and their kids.
Yeah, I've sorry, I jumped in on this WebEx about halfway through, and I caught, the last 30 minutes, and listening to this conversation about parenting. Many of our parents, I'm from an African home, and our parents sent us to school and trusted the system that they would be able to educate and teach us all of the things that we needed to learn, and also instilled in us, or me anyway, that you shouldn't be questioning the system, and that you shouldn't, that you should follow authority, and that you shouldn't be, the person that goes against the grain. And it wasn't until I was in, high school, and I wore a headscarf to school, and I ended up getting reprimanded because I refused to take my head wrap off. And, it became a huge problem until my mother shows up at the school, and I'm pretty close to being expelled from school for wearing cultural clothing. And thankfully, my mom came, and, she shows up in her headscarf. And so it, and even after that, it was still become a problem wearing cultural clothing to school. But, also I think many parents who are newcomers to Canada, there is a reluctance of wanting to be, to question the system and demand that the system is working for them. Because I think, with a lack of advocating for your child, also questioning the curriculum, questioning the teachers that are in place. I know many people here are from Edmonton. I live in Calgary, but it is very common that you ask immigrant families and Black families about the Board of Education, and there is a rampant issues, and even worse amongst the Catholic Board of Education, which recently had a young girl commit suicide here. So, the conversation with our African parents around what you should do is really, really needed. And I'm a mother myself, and I went and I was looking for resources to talk to my child about race, about diversity and inclusion, and I automatically turned to our local library. And I found a list of books that I could check out from the library, and I went through this list of books, and I was shocked because of the popular books for children, for Black children. The Calgary Library had about 5% of the books recommended. The resources weren't even available on, like, even free resources. So if you could imagine what kind of barriers of entry are provided for immigrant families that may not know where to turn, you know, I think it's a really big hurdle for people.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great discussion. Why don't we put it on AHC to do this again so that we can continue the conversation? So we have everyone's email address. We'll send out the resources via your email, and we'll try and schedule another conversation. Ngabe?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for all the inputs and everything that you brought to our attention. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you again next time. Another last thing I want to say, Empowering Black Girls, we are open to registration for Black girls 16 to 24 years old. So if you know a Black girl and if you believe that this is a great program for them, please encourage them to join us. We'll send all the information. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Sounds good, Audrey. We'll try and do that. I see your comment. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.